Hi, everyone. I decided to do a little impromptu uh, workshop to talk about the first days of school, the preparation, and the execution. I thought this could be useful at any point in time for those of you who are starting off the year. If you already started off the year, this will still be useful to you because it might get you to think about why things aren't working the way they should be working. But before we get there, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my summer clinic that I just had with my students, and we had a really successful summer clinic. It was grades 6 through 12, and it was 2 weeks in the evening from 6:30 at night until 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday for 2 weeks with a concert at the end. And I'm really proud of it because, first of all, we in this 2 week summer clinic our choir sang 10 songs from memory. In addition, we had two student run a cappella groups. All of the students at the summer clinic were broken up into two student run a cappella groups for an hour each night. And in each of the two groups, they learned two brand new arrangements. So a student wrote an arrangement prior to the clinic, and then the each group learned two songs in an hour rehearsal each day. So yesterday, which was our concert at the end of the 2 weeks, we performed 10 pieces of choral repertoire and then four a cappella pieces with individual mics. We had 21 mics being used on the stage. So it was a huge success. And what made the summer clinic so special for me was how my stress level was so low because the students were so empowered. They were doing the work, and I was there um, supervising, coordinating, and giving them those opportunities. And that's really the whole goal of what I try to teach in the mentorship and what I try to put out in my blog and in my courses. It's how do we get to a point where our work-life balance is not just in terms of time, but in terms of our energy. It's balanced. That when we go home, we can enjoy our life. We're not bringing stress home with us. We're not bringing work home with us. How do we create this joy in our job, the satisfaction where the kids are thriving, our program is thriving, and it's not consuming our entire life. That's what I've always been striving for. And I'm about to begin my 27th year in the same school district at the high school. I'm also teaching at the middle school as well. And I love what I do. I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I feel like I'm more impactful now than I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And, you know, on one level, you might be thinking, well, you have more experience. You're more experienced, you should be more effective. But we also know what happens in our career. We get burnt out. We get worn out. We get tired of doing the same thing. Our administrators wear us out. The parents wear us out. Um, the students are changing. All of these things are constantly pulling us down, right? So for me, because I've got this mindset and this approach, I've figured out a way to feel like I'm at the peak of what I can do and I'm helping people at a level that I couldn't have helped them 10 years ago. And that's why I love so much what I'm doing. So this year, my summer clinic was more successful than any other year. In previous years, to give you an example, like I said, we have the choir part and we have the a cappella part. And this is one summer clinic. So every student who enrolls, that's voluntary, grades 6 through 12, they come and they sing in the choir, and then we break up into the a cappella groups for that hour every day. In the previous years, we have had two a cappella groups, and each one would learn one piece of music, and it would be something that was already learned earlier in the year. So new students would be learning tried and true arrangements, and some of the students there would have already known the arrangement. This year, my two student run a cappella groups did two arrangements each, and they were brand new. So that's an example of how we're pushing the envelope, pushing forward. And in that time, in that hour, I was just walking between the groups, watching the groups, trying to figure out how to work the mics. I was engaged in their enjoyment, but I was not leading what they were doing because we've cultivated this environment where the students are able to work together, collaborate, and become in charge of their own learning. Now, I said all that. Let's go back to day one, preparation for day one for having a successful program. So my goal is to not make this super long, but to make this super effective, to give you bits of information that can change the way you do what you do in the classroom, that will help to impact you. So I don't want to focus on little details. I want to focus on big picture stuff that might change the way you view your job and what you hope to accomplish. And with that said, that's what my mentorship is all about. It's how do I get you to see your job differently so you get different results. And when you get different results, the students enjoy uh, your program more, there's better retention, there's better buy in, and therefore you love your job more and you learn how to let go so your students start doing more. And as a result, you have a healthier work life balance. So let's talk about that right now. Let's talk about preparation for the first day. So, the first thing that I think everybody should do, if you have a handbook, you should be looking at that handbook and going through it. Now, if you've created a handbook in the past, this is great. You have your handbook, right? But it's your job to look at it with fresh eyes, think about where you are in your career, where these students are, and make sure that your handbook is up to date with what's important to you now as a teacher. A lot of times people keep the same handbook for many, many years and they don't look at it with fresh eyes with changing policies in the school, post COVID. There are lots of changes that happen. So you want to make sure that your handbook is up to date. Now, your classroom management plan is key to starting off the year. So I want to talk a little bit about the preparation of the beginning of the year, the preparation with your classroom management plan, and then I want to talk about implementation. So, your classroom management plan is always your guidelines, your way of redirecting behavior, and your routines and procedures, right? That's what it is. That is your classroom management plan. What most teachers do is they take rules that they've always had or that they heard are good rules, and those are the rules of their classroom. There's very little why as to why those rules matter. Now, I call them guidelines. I don't call them rules because rulers make rules. Guidelines are given by CEOs. So companies will have guidelines. And when you don't follow a guideline, what happens? They want to retrain you. Their goal is to train you to follow the guidelines. When you have rules, what happens when you don't follow a rule? You get punished for not following a rule. So for me, I always think about guidelines. What are my guidelines for the class? Now, most teachers, they've got these rules, they put them up on the board, and those are the rules. My philosophy is let me figure out what the disruptions and distractions are that happen in my class, and let me come up with guidelines that will specifically target those disruptions and distractions. So, one of the things in my book and in my mentorship and in the first days of choir and beyond prep course, I have a disruptions and distractions sheet. and I ask you to fill out every single disruption and distraction that you have in your classroom. Everything. It doesn't matter whether it's lateness or getting out of your seat or sharpening a pencil or going to the bathroom. You write them all down. And then, based on that, can you come up with 5 guidelines that will address those specific uh, issues, disruptions, and distractions that are happening in the classroom? So I believe that 5 guidelines could knock out 90% of the disruptions and distractions. But there's another part to that, and that's routines and procedures. The procedures that you create in your class, which are not guidelines, they're procedures, they're things that happen, they will address the remaining 10% of the issues that occur in your class. So, for example, let's say students needing to go to the bathroom is an issue. Well, if you create a procedure for that, one that does not lead to disruptions, you have now eliminated that disruption, right? So, just an example. Let's say the disruption is students asking to go to the bathroom all the time. You're asking a question and a hand is raised and you're excited to call on a student and their answer is, "Can I go to the bathroom?" That's a disruption. It's disrupting the flow of the rehearsal. So if you create a signal, let's say if you put 2 fingers up, that means that you need to go to the bathroom. That would be a procedure to fix the problem. It's not a guideline, it's a procedure. What would a guideline be? Raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged before you speak. That's a guideline. Follow directions the first time they're given. That's a guideline. So you want to have 5 guidelines and you want them to be clear. And what I mean by clear is that they have to be specific and address a specific action. Something that's not clear is be respectful. Be respectful is not clear, it's not specific. When you say be respectful, that to me, you and I are going to think different things about that phrase. I might consider something to be respectful that you think is not respectful. If we have to have a discussion, it's not a good guideline. So when people argue with me and they say, "Well, but I want students to be respectful," I say, "Well, what does it mean to be respectful?" And they shoot off the specific things that they think defines respect. I don't want people calling out. I don't want people talking over other people. I don't want people touching other people. I don't want people calling other people names. Okay, well, let's address those specific things as our guidelines. If we can address them in our guidelines, then we have solved this issue, right? So um, rather than saying be respectful and having arguments in the middle of class over whether somebody's following a guideline or not, let's be so specific on our guidelines. Okay? Now, we need to have a way to redirect behavior when students are not following the guidelines. Here's the important thing. We're not there to punish the students. We're there to redirect their behavior because we want them to be great students. They're not going to become great students by us punishing them. They're going to become great students by us teaching them how to exhibit good behavior. Now, I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes in terms of how we do this in the classroom. But right now, I'm talking about the preparation. So, what I do for all of my behavior improvement is I have a 1 page sheet. And the 1 page sheet is all I need to do to handle all behavioral issues. You might be thinking, well, that's insane. How on earth do you do it with 1 page sheet? Well, let's start with the premise that I don't want to punish myself or the students. Punishing myself means I don't want to stay for detention. I don't want to stay after school. So I don't want to give them something that I don't want to do. If I don't want to do it, I'm going to be pretty angry when I give it to them. So I avoid all of that stuff. I have a one-page sheet. And what I do is the first time they don't follow the guidelines, I give them a warning. Nothing. The second time, I give them the sheet. And on the top of the sheet, it has a list of the 5 guidelines. And it says, please circle the guideline or guidelines you did not follow. Circle it, sign your name. That's it. They're done. If there's a third time in the class, I have them take that sheet, and then on the bottom, they have to explain what they're going to do differently about their behavioral choices so they can improve in the class. And they sign the sheet. The fourth time in the same period, I collect the sheet and I send it to their parents. The fifth time, they fill that out, I send it to their parents, and I submit a referral. It never gets that far. It usually gets at most to the parents because they understand this. Now, this form is in my handbook. So the parents are aware of this form. And if they're not aware, I can at least address the fact that that form is in the handbook. So the parents know that if it got there, I gave them a warning. I had them acknowledge the guidelines they didn't follow. I had them write about what they're going to do differently before it got to the parents. So they can see where their child is in the process of improving their behavior. Okay, so that's my form. Okay, now we talked about this preparation for the guidelines, coming up with the right guidelines, coming up with a plan for behavior, handling behavior, and also routines and procedures, creating them. One of the things I want to mention about uh, creating routines and procedures, you want to write out the procedure for everything that you want to occur. And so the way I do this is before we even get there, what I always tell the people that I work with, the choral directors across the country, what I want them to do is I want them to envision the way they want their classroom to run. How do you envision your ideal classroom? How do the students enter? Where do you stand? How do they get to their seat? What happens to start the class? How do they ask a question? All of this stuff. What do they look like when they're singing? What do they look like when they're sitting? What do they look like when they're standing? Have a clear vision. If you don't have a vision of what you want, then they're not going to do anything that you want, right? If you're not clear, they're not going to have clarity, so then they're going to create their own vision of what they want to do. It's kind of like as a conductor, if you don't have a plan for what you want the music to sound like in your head, it's not going to sound like anything. But if you have clarity about the sound you want to create, you're on that right track. Now, you might not be able to get your group there, but you can get them moving in that right direction. And the more skilled your students become and the more skilled you become, you get closer and closer to that recording that you've created in your head. Same thing about classroom management. Create the vision of what you want your rehearsal to look like. Envision that. So with that, you need to create routines and procedures. You create the procedures by writing it down. What is the procedure for going to the bathroom? What is the procedure for a student being late? What is the procedure for a student sharpening their pencil, for not having their music, for being too sick to sing? Whatever it is, what's the procedure for handing out music, for collecting music? Now, you don't have to teach them every single procedure. This is for you. This is for you to know how you want things to happen so they don't just kind of sort of happen. You want to be in charge of what's going to happen. Hope that makes sense. So, that is the preparation, and that should be in your handbook, right? The key procedures. Also, a description of how you envision your class to run. How do you want the class to run? right? We also, of course, you want things like your grades, how your grading system, all the dates for the concerts, all that stuff. But I'm talking about when it comes down to a classroom management plan, it should be in your handbook. Okay? So now let's get to the first day of class. You need to have a plan for your first day of class. This is not this meticulous plan that your supervisor needs to see. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is a plan for how your class is going to flow, how students are going to feel from the moment they enter the class. So I suggest you think about where you're standing, what's on the board, how the students know where their seat is, and they should have assigned seats on the very first day. I don't care if you don't know what voice part they are, pretend you know. Put them in the soprano, alto, tenor, bass section. Put them in the wrong section, doesn't matter, but pretend they're in a section. Put them in seats, and they should know it before they walk into your room. So you have that plan. Is it posted on Google Classroom? Is it outside the door? Is it sent through an email? Is it posted on your smart board? They need to walk into the room and get straight to their seat and have something to do because it's not going to start on time on the first day, right? It can't start on time on the first day. Kids, they don't know how to get to your room yet and all that stuff. So you need to give them something to do. And you are either standing at the door greeting them, or maybe you have student officers standing at the door, or maybe you're standing at the piano, whatever it is. On the board, besides if you need a seating chart, you also should have your name, the period, welcome, all that stuff, and if you have an assignment, what the assignment should be. Now, after that, the next thing you should do is go over your classroom management plan. But here's what teachers miss, assuming they do this. What they don't do is explain why we have a classroom management plan. We have a classroom management plan to give every student an equal opportunity to be successful in the class. It has nothing to do with me, it has to do with them and their learning, not my teaching, their learning. So I explain that and then I explain my guidelines, each one why we have the guidelines. This doesn't take very long. I might ask a few questions to them. Who could raise their hand and explain to the class why they think this guideline would be helpful to them? And if I do that, I'm actually reinforcing the guidelines I have. Thank you for raising your hand. That's a great answer. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Can anybody else raise their hand and share with the class? Whatever it might be, thank you for raising your hand, right? So I go over those guidelines, and the next thing I do is I go over the behavioral redirection. So those guidelines are the most important thing about this class because it creates a safe environment for everybody to be successful. So if you are not following those guidelines, my goal is to help you to follow those guidelines because it will help you to be a better student and it will help everybody around you to be successful. So when you're not following those guidelines, my goal is to figure out how to help you improve your uh, behavior and your focus in the classroom. And then I go over the sheet, I hand it out, or I post it on the board, and then I might say, are there any questions? If there are, please raise your hand. And thank you for raising your hand. As soon as I'm done with this, I get into singing, right? We start singing. Now, I haven't taught any procedures yet. I'm going to be teaching the most important procedures on day one. And some of them involve singing. Now, I write a lot about this and people get confused, so I'm going to explain it right here. I believe it is our priority to focus on our classroom management plan for the whole period. However, the students are going to be focused on singing for a good portion of the period. We're focused on classroom management, they're focused on singing. How does this work? Well, After I'm done going over exactly what I just spoke about, I say, okay, everybody, let's stand up. Thank you for following directions, right? So I just thank them. So I reinforce the following directions, which is one of my guidelines. Well, what do I do next? Well, everybody, when I say stand up, what I'm really saying is level one. Level one is my direction for standing up. And level one is not just standing up, but it's standing up with good alignment. Who could share with the class why good alignment is important when you're singing? Thank you for raising your hand, right? So I'm already reinforcing the procedure for standing up, level one. I'm reinforcing the asking the questions who could raise their hand. I'm thanking them for raising their hand, right? So this is my pattern. Now, before I go any further, there are 4 steps to effectively using a classroom management plan. Again, this is what is often overlooked. There's the introduction of the plan. How do you introduce it? And that's the introduction of the whole plan and then the introduction of each guideline or of each procedure. The introduction, so I'm introducing this for the first time. Then there is the teaching of it. So right now, for example, when I'm talking about who could raise their hand and tell the class, that is teaching it, right? I introduced it when I talked about the guidelines. Now I'm teaching it. Who could raise their hand and tell the class? By the way, when we're standing, that is level one. I'm introducing it, teaching it, introducing it, different things. Now, thank you for raising your hand. That is positively reinforcing it. Thank you for following directions, positively reinforcing it. The last part is redirecting. You redirect when students are not following the guideline or the procedure. Again, you introduce it, you teach it, you positively reinforce it, and you redirect it. So the students are standing up, and I just taught them level one. They're going to sing for 3 or 4 minutes, right? I'm going to have them do a warm up, just get them singing, give them some compliments. Thank you. Oh, it's so great seeing some of you opening up your mouths so much. That's great. It's nice to see you all standing with this new alignment. I love that. It looks great. Okay, everybody, sit back down, please. Thank you so much. Now, when you sit back down, you could sit any way you'd like as long as you're not touching the person to your left or right and your feet aren't up. That's level three. Level three is how you could sit whenever we're just talking. We're not singing, we're just talking. That's level three. Thank you so much. Now, level two is like you're standing, but you're sitting. Can we all sit on the edge of our chair? That's level two. So, level two is sitting like you're standing. I introduced it. Okay, everybody sit back level three. Great job. I'm teaching it now. Okay, everybody back to level two. Great job. Teaching it. Then I might go over another procedure like, oh, something really important I want you all to know about is the bathroom. If anybody needs to use the bathroom, here's the policy, blah, 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 blah. Introduction. Understand? So I'm introducing, I'm teaching, I'm positively reinforcing, and I'm redirecting if I need to. I've got my stack of behavioral redirection forms right there. Okay? So right after that, I might have them sing while they're sitting at level two. And then I'll go, okay, level one, please. Great job. You remembered. You remembered level one is standing up. But remember, it's not just standing up, it's standing up with good alignment. Great job remembering that. So now I'm teaching it and positively reinforcing it. So I'm utilizing the guidelines, I'm utilizing the procedures, and I'm teaching them as I'm focused probably now on teaching around. Now, my Number one goal when we're doing singing on the first day is I don't hand out music. I want to keep eye contact. I want to keep engaging them, keep looking at them, having them look at me. I look at them. Maybe I'll put something on the board. That's okay too because they're looking forward. I'm not handing out music. My goal is to build a relationship with them and get them singing. So if they're focused on their singing, I'm focused on my classroom management. Now, I'll say one more thing about the first day. As I'm doing this, I will also talk about the end of class, how class is going to end. I will be introducing it. I will be teaching it by going over it a bunch of times. And then right before the bell, I will remind them one more time. Just a reminder, the bell is a signal for me to dismiss you. It is not something that you just get up and do. It is a signal for me, not for you. I'm glad this is helpful, Bahanan. McCall, I should say. Um, I'm happy this is helping you. So you need to remember that you need to teach that. So you introduce it in the middle of class. You remind them near the end of class. The other thing I do is I plan to start on time the next day. So I say to the class, tomorrow I'm going to start on time. If you're late, this is what you need to do. I explain it to them, but I'm going to start on time. I'm going to play an opening chord, and that's going to mean to stand up. Stand up. Let's practice that right now. Boom, play it. Great job. We all know this. We all understand that for tomorrow. Before the bell, I'll remind them again. Just a reminder, tomorrow we're going to start on time and I'm going to play an opening chord. So if you're late, blah, 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 and this chord is going to start the class. So I explained that to them in advance. I introduced it, I taught it, and I positively reinforced it. The seating number 3 is a huge one for me. I need to let them sit how they want to. Yeah, definitely. You know, in terms of how they sit, we don't need perfection out of our students. We want them to feel comfortable in our class. When they're singing, we need them to understand that if they want to develop the musculature, if they want to create the best sound, they need to stand with good alignment. They need to sit with good alignment. But when I'm blabbing, why on earth do they need to sit with good alignment? For what reason? Because we're trying to train them to have good posture? That's not our job. Our job is to get them to differentiate between I'm singing now and I need to have good alignment. So, yeah, give them the space to sit back. Give them the space to be relaxed so they differentiate. So, when you start singing, imagine a guest in your room. Imagine when your students are trained. Kids are just sitting like they're sitting in every other class, they're sitting back. I mean, hopefully, they don't have like a desk. They're sitting in a music chair, hopefully. They're sitting back, and all of a sudden, you play a chord on the piano, and they all sit like this. They all sit forward. Imagine what that looks like. It shows that they're focused, that they're zoned in. We're teaching them by them learning the different ways to sit and that it's okay to sit in a relaxed way. Then, when it's time for them to engage, they truly engage. Okay? Um, so, we've gone over all of this stuff and we prepared them for the next day. So when they walk in, now when they walk in the next day, if I'm standing at the door, I'm reminding them, hey, just a reminder, we're starting on time. Just a reminder, please find your seat. We're going to start on time. And on the board it says, we're going to start on time, everybody. We're starting on time. Remember this. So again, I am teaching them that. Bell rings, boom, start the chord, and they stand. So day 2, we start with singing. We start with our singing. We do spend a good amount of time. I review the guidelines again quicker, but I review them. Just to review, here are the 5 guidelines. And remember, follow directions is important because blah, blah, blah. Just a reminder, da, da, da. And I got the behavioral redirection forms. They're there to help you. They're not there to hurt you. Just a reminder. Just a reminder, if you need to go to the bathroom, here's the policy, here's the procedure, and so on. I believe you introduce procedures on a need to know basis. When you're going to hand out music, that's when you introduce the procedure for handing out music, right? You teach procedures on a need to know basis. So some procedures might not be introduced for a week or 2 weeks, but the ones that need to be introduced get introduced at the time that they need to be introduced. Hope that makes sense. So we completed day one, and day one was sort of like 70% classroom management and 30% singing, right? That's what it was in terms of timing, but in terms of our brains and our hearts, it was more like 90% classroom management. Okay? Yeah, exactly. Don't assume they know anything. You know why? I'll tell you why you don't want to assume they know anything. Because they have 9 different classes, 8 different classes in a day. They've had other choral teachers, other music teachers. Everybody expects something different. So why should we assume that they know anything? Why should we assume? Is it fair for them to assume that? Is it fair for us to assume that? It's really not. We should be teaching them what we want and also not punishing them when they forget, encouraging them to do the right thing to improve so they can become better students in our class because we have their best interest um, in everything that we do. It's not about us, it's about them. So day one was like 70-30 in terms of classroom management and making music. Day two is going to be 60-40. It is still going to be dominated by classroom management, but we're going to start with the music. And the classroom management stuff will be trickled in after we sing and going back and forth. Day three is now 50-50 music making, classroom management. Day four is going to be 40-60. Now we're doing more music. Okay, we still have new procedures. Maybe we're handing out sheet music on day four. So we're teaching them how we hand out the music and how we hold our music up when we sing, or how we take notes in our music, or whatever it might be. How what we do if we need to sharpen our pencils. Day five is like 30%, 70%. Now we're really getting more into the music making and less into the classroom management, but it's still there. At the end of the day, I should say at the end of the first week or two, it's still part of our job to focus on classroom management. I would say 10% of every class is focused on classroom management. And you might be thinking, wow, that's insane. You're still going to be spending 10%. If I have a 40-minute period, we're spending 4 minutes on classroom management. The answer is yes. But it's not in the way that you think. You're not standing up there reading the guidelines. It's more like you are pausing to make sure everybody's engaged. You're reminding them of things. Just a reminder, blah, 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 blah. Thank you for following. Thank you for raising your hand. Thank you. You're still putting the effort in to managing your classroom and understanding if you have a 40-minute period, you really have 36 minutes of teaching them music and 4 minutes of reinforcing your classroom management plan. And if you manage it well, you will have better focus for the other 36 minutes. I always say I would rather talk for 30 minutes to get 10 minutes of really focused learning. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, if I talk for 30 minutes, they'll be completely disengaged. Well, you're probably right. But the point that I'm making stays the same. I know that I need to do certain things to ensure they are focused and engaged in my class. It's not how many minutes they sing, it's how many minutes they're actually engaged and focused on their own personal growth. And I will do what it takes to make sure they're focused, highly focused, because when they are, they buy in, they accomplish more, and they retain more from day to day. My students retain almost everything from one day to the next. And trust me, they don't go home and practice. They just retain it because they were focused, because it mattered. When they were in the class, they were doing something that mattered, and therefore the next day it was still there in their brain. That's the point here. So I think I went over classroom management, the preparation for classroom management, and then classroom management and how to work it the first day. Now, last thing I'll say is that if you already started the year and you feel like, oh, it's too late, there's no way, I already screwed this up. You didn't. You can make changes at any point in the year. You really, truly can. All you need to do is get up in front of the class and give your why. Why am I making these changes? Hey, class, I realized I've let you down. The rules that I had were really not effective to give you the best opportunity to learn. So starting now, or starting tomorrow, we're going to have new guidelines. I'm really excited about them. So that's the approach, and then you introduce the plan the next day. Now you might be thinking, well, they're going to just be disruptive. They're not going to listen to me when I present this new plan. Well, you're probably right. Some of them won't. But here's the thing. They don't have to be perfect. What you need to do is you need to make your case and be clear on it. And then when they don't follow those guidelines, follow through. When you follow through, that will start to show them that this is what's going to be happening. And when you continue to reinforce this day in and day out with the reminder going from 80 or 70% to 30%, as I talked about, because day one is your new day one, then 60-40, then 50-50, then 40-60. When you do that, you will be able to turn around your program. So, in closing, this is what I teach in the mentorship program. I've got in-depth in-depth coursework. What I'm talking about is just a brief overview, just going through topics quickly just to show you you really can do this. There's a way more. I'm just scratching the surface here. But the mentorship, not only is the content enriching and way deeper than what I'm talking about here, but I'm coaching you every step of the way. So I'm going to make sure your guidelines make sense and align with what you want, and that your behavioral redirection makes sense. And we're going to be talking about what you personally are struggling with and the issue with that one student that won't stop talking, or the student that's talking back, or but your situation is different. Your seats are not aligned right, or there are too many students, or whatever it might be. Kids don't want to be there. Just get shoved into your class. Whatever your situation is, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you every step of the way throughout the year. That's my goal. So if you're interested in booking a call with me where we can discuss this, I'm going to, let me put it in the chat. Let me see if I can do this correctly. Nope, I didn't do that correctly. So if you're interested in booking a call with me, I'm going to put it right here. Let's see if this works. And you just book a call with me and we'll talk about it. You're under no obligation to join, but what we do is we talk about where you are in your career, what's going on in your classroom, what you're struggling with. And it's usually, for most people, it's classroom management, buy-in, retention from rehearsal to rehearsal, and retention, kids wanting to stay with it. It's usually another elective is beating them out. Kids are forced to be in their class. All of the typical stuff. It's common. My solution is not common. My solution is tried and true. It's working with dozens and dozens of choral directors across the country, middle school and high school. I'm coaching dozens of choral directors every week live, in addition to the content that they're getting. So I really, really, really hope that this is helpful for you. And this thread is here so you guys can ask questions. I will answer them here, but I hope you will book a call with me because I really want to help you. I want you to have the most successful, enriching career, make a difference in the lives of your students, and most importantly, develop a healthy work-life balance where you love your job, you love your students, you're grateful for your job, your program is thriving and you're home with your kids or your family or your friends, you have your hobbies, you're doing other things. So please, yeah, Adam joined. But Adam, we got to get you on those calls. I want you on those calls. And that's where I could help you the most. We're going to get you there. Um, Please reach out to me and ask any questions. And I thank you all so much. Are there any questions? If you have any, you could ask them right here before I get off. I could stay on for another minute or two. And then from that point on, I hope you, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, I forgot. We're delayed by like 20 seconds. So Adam was probably responding to before. Um, and Adam, please message me back. Let talk to me. I want to really help you get started in this and feel like this was the best decision you ever made coming into the mentorship. I'm so glad I did that I helped you because that's the goal. A lot of people don't realize that they can get help. You know, it's like you think, no, I'm a lost cause. Like this is my situation is doomed. It's like, yeah, in your fixed mind where you are, you are. But when somebody can help to shift your mind a little bit, you can see it all differently. Um, Adam, I gotta look at it. I'll message you back and forth. That Monday Central Time. I don't even know what time that is. Central Time is what, like 6:15 or something. My time. I'm Eastern. We'll figure that out. Let's talk when we get off, and we'll find a time. We'll talk in our private group, and we'll figure that out. Yeah. Well, McCall, reach out to me. I know that you scheduled a call, but then you weren't there. Schedule it with me. Let's talk about it. I'll tell you this much: the people that schedule a call um, are usually very grateful. Whether they decide to work with me or not, they know that my heart is there. I'm there to help them, and they know that there's hope. And I know I can help you. If you want to be helped, if you want a solution, I can help you. That's my goal. And if this webinar here or live, Facebook Live, that I just did as an impromptu. I literally said, you know what? I have a little bit of time. I just put my son to sleep. My daughter's at a sleepover. My wife is working the overnight shift um, as a nurse. She's a Broadway actress and a labor and delivery nurse, and she's working the overnight shift. Said, everybody's asleep. I have some time. Why don't I just get on and provide some uh, enriching content for my Facebook group, for the Choral Clarity Facebook group. And hopefully this will reach way beyond my impromptu live uh, discussion here, and that many of you will watch this and you'll be intrigued and have more questions for me. So I'm going to log off. Adam, I hope you reach out to me. McCall, reach out to me. And anybody else, anytime. And I will speak to you all soon. Thank you all so much.